Hi guys, Kelly here from BodyFit Solutions. I'm just going to do a little sequence that kind of tries to lengthen through the back of our legs, through the hamstrings, and bring us into a little active sequence for the back of the legs that helps to lengthen and strengthen. Okay, so we're going to start. I've got a little box, but it's probably better done with a chair, up a little bit higher, so that you can sit a little bit more vertical. So I've got a little lacrosse ball, a hard ball. You could also use a rolling pin underneath your leg to get the sensation underneath. So I'm going to pop the ball between the sitting bone and the back of the leg. And I'm just going to kind of dig that ball in to where it feels nice and tender. Maybe not nice, but it feels tender. And then I want to let the leg relax into the ball. Okay, so try and find the fibers of your back of the legs, the hamstrings, that feel the most tender. And then try and sit up really tall. So you don't want to be slumped into this position. You want to be sending your tailbone back and sitting your spine upright. And you're just going to take some nice deep breaths. Now if you're on a chair and you're a little bit more elevated, you can actually straighten your leg out and lower it down. It might not necessarily straighten out, but you can kind of kick the leg out and release. What you don't want to do is kind of activate the front of the leg. So you don't want to be tense there. You just want to let the leg relax into the ball. So you're just going to take a few deep breaths. And just seeing if those hamstrings will let go. So you should feel kind of a 7 or 8 out of 10 in discomfort. It might feel slightly bruisey, just might feel like the tissue isn't really going soft. And then hopefully with a few deep breaths, it'll start to subside. Now some of you will subside a little bit sooner than others. Some of you might need a bit more time kind of hanging out there. Okay, if it does subside, you move it down your leg. So now you're kind of more mid-thigh, and do the same thing there. So you're waiting for the initial tightness to subside. Now as I've moved down the leg, it's actually not as bad, and it wasn't really releasing up near the top, so I'm going to go back to the top. So if you don't feel the release, stay there a little bit longer. You want to do at least 2 minutes down your leg, but you might spend a majority of your time near the top. Okay, and once that lets go, once those fibers get a little bit softer, then you can move down the leg. So some people will have the whole length of the hamstring really tight. Some people will have one part of it. You might not have a lot at the top, but you might have more near the bottom. So this is for you to explore. Okay, so minimum 2 minutes, up to as long as you need to release that tissue. Okay, and then just make sure you do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so pause the video and set your timer to make sure you do the other side. Okay, so let's assume you've done both sides now, and I'm going to probably feel very lopsided doing this now. And what I'd like you to do is to stand, and ideally if you have a wall that you can stand against, then you can do this really well. But if you've got a little chair, something you can hold yourself, if not, you can do it as I'm doing it. So we're going to bend into the hips, and we're going to send the pelvis backwards in space. And if you imagine you've got your wall there in front of you, you're going to push against the wall to send the pelvis back. As you do, you want your deep belly to be on, the knees are slightly bent, and then you can walk down the wall a little bit further. Always keep your head above your shoulders. Push back a little bit more. Now I can feel the hamstrings. And then you want to try and straighten the legs a little bit once you're back there. So that's giving a nice big pull. And then you slowly walk back up your wall or up your chair, or even your countertop in your kitchen or dining room. Okay, so the key thing is we bend the hips, we have a little bit in the knees of a knee bend. Send the pelvis backwards and reach like you're pushing away from your wall. Deepening the belly. Okay, really lengthening, and then walk down your wall and straighten the legs a little bit without losing that connection. So you should feel that all the way up the back of the legs, and then walk your hands back up and come to that standing posture. So you want to do that about 2 to 5 5 times and really feel that lengthening through the back of the legs. Okay, now we want to go into a little bit of a hip hinge. Now that we've got the legs a little bit more relaxed at the back, we're going to try and see if we can fire into our glutes a little bit more. So we're going to come down. I'm just going to move my box a little bit further forward. Okay, so we're going to come down in the back. We're going to have our feet vertical so we can press down into the floor. And you're going to just lift and hover the pelvis a little bit off the mat. Now this can also be done with your feet on the wall with your legs at 90. So you'd have your feet here and then you would lift your pelvis up and just try and come to a neutral position. It's a little bit harder on the wall. We're just going to hang out here in neutral to really feel the feet and feel the back of the legs. So you might need to deeply connect into your tummy muscles, not strong. It's like a light retraction of the belly. And then lower the pelvis down. So I would get there, press into the feet, whether they're on the wall or on the floor. So this would be kind of progression 1, progression 2 would be feet on the wall. Okay, feel, are you lengthened as much as you can through your trunk? Are you hyperextended through your low back? And then what I want you to do in this version is to tilt the pelvis a little bit so that hips fall to ribs, press into the feet, and come into your nice bridge position. Lengthening through the whole body. So I want you to feel like your trunk is going out through your legs. And then just lower back down through the hips. So you don't do that full reversion on the wall. If you've practiced a little bit of connecting to the wall, then put your feet on the ground and then come up. Feel like the angle between your hips and your pelvis gets nice and straight. Okay, so the pelvis and the legs are nice and straight, and we're lengthening through the whole body to come out here. Now, this isn't a very functional way of doing a bridge because we don't really work in this way. So what I'd like you to do when you get to the top is to feel that you've got the connection of your deep abdominals, the back of the legs are holding you there, and then you're going to press into your right arm on the floor and your left leg, and you're going to try and lift the other limbs. Now, that was very hard. And if you found that your hips dropped, let's try and keep them up this time. So now left arm, right leg. And come back. You might need a little rest, bringing the pelvis down. So come back up, tilt the hips a little bit towards the ribs, deep abdominals. So right arm, left foot. Can we stay connected to that left side as the right leg comes up to tabletop? Now can we connect into the other side and come all the way back? Now, if you want to progress this, then we can come up to a higher surface like your couch or a chair that doesn't move. Just make sure it's not a moving surface. Or what's really great is a ball, a stability ball where your legs are nice and straight out. So now let's feel. And alternating. Alternating. So I always press down into the one arm, the one foot, before I lift the other limbs. Now if you're doing that on the ball, I would keep both arms on the ground and have one leg coming up with the other leg straight. And then release, and then hug your knees into your chest. And then just roll yourself over and come back to standing. And I'd like to finish with a little balance exercise here that challenges that length through the hamstrings, coming into a little stork. So you're going to take the leg back behind you. You're going to pivot the pelvis over your leg. So that little stork. See if you can reach your arms down in front and then come back and return to center. Take the other leg, pivot over that leg. Notice if it's different on sides. Feels very different. Reach the arms, back to the hips, come back up. Now your progression is taking it into the stork, taking your hands in front and wibbly wobbling, and then adding 4 little rotations. So rotating the trunk, very challenging. Okay, let's do the other side. So pivoting over that leg, little bend in the knees, hands go in front, then I'm just pulling one arm back, one arm forward, gliding my shoulder blades around the ribs, keeping the hips square, very challenging. So I'm rotating the trunk, the upper back, and then back to center. Okay, so it's really about this upper back turning, one arm going forward, one arm going back, one shoulder blade going around your ribs, and the other shoulder blade going back towards the spine. So hopefully you enjoyed that little sequence. What I would also suggest is at the end, coming back and checking in with the bum tissue. Okay, so you might want to then come back onto your sitting position and then just check a little bit on the side of the bum. You can come down onto the floor to do this as well, which works quite well. So I'm just going into the side part of my bum and a little bit more around kind of the gluteal tissue. So you can either do that in your chair, or if you come down to sitting, you can just get the ball kind of into that side of the bum, and that'll give you a nice little release after you've done some of those storks and some of those bridging work. You might even find that you want to do this a little bit before that, see how you feel. Sometimes you don't want to release too much of the tissue that we're working, but we might just want to kind of release it a bit afterwards. So make sure you do both sides, explore around. You could also lie on your back and explore into the back of the glute tissue and just see for yourself where you kind of need those releasing points. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining. Hopefully you enjoyed that.